Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to today's Partner Infopedia web conference. You've joined us for Delivering Network Readiness, Updated Version. We are broadcasting and recording today's web conference through Skype meeting broadcast, and the audio can be heard through your PC speakers only. If you do not consent to being part of a recorded session, we ask that you please disconnect your browser at this time. The web conference recording will be available at skypeoperationframework.com/WAC Academy. If you have any questions for our presenters today or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. We will post some announcements there in just a few minutes, and we'll continue to monitor that throughout today's session. Now, let's move on to the show. Presenting with us today from Microsoft, we have Cornel Bullens, who is a Senior Customer Engineering Architect at Microsoft. Cornel, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Debbie, and welcome to today's presentation. So let's start with me. I'm Cornel Bullens. I'm a Senior Customer Engineering Architect within our Customer Experience and Deployment team. I've been working at Microsoft for 5 years, and today we're going to talk about my favorite subject, Network Readiness Assessments. So today we will talk a little bit about SOF. Then we will do a quick recap of the Network Readiness Assessment. We will introduce our customer and we will walk through the stages just like you would with your customer. As a reminder, so for today we are going to a Network Readiness walkthrough. This will basically show you how to deliver a Network Readiness Assessment. So in the previous training that you should have already consumed, we were talking about what materials there were available and when you should use them. And today we're actually going to use those materials in a mock delivery for our customer. If you haven't consumed the previous training yet, we suggest you pause this training right now and you watch the previous training. The previous training is called the Network Readiness Overview. So, about SOF. So SOF is our Skype operations framework. It's something that we're building and we're constantly updating to help you plan, deploy, and operate Skype for Business in the best way possible. We're giving you practical guidance, recommended practices, tools, everything you need for that complete Skype for Business deployment, the Skype for Business planning, and the Skype for Business operating. So, with that being said, what we require is feedback. We need feedback on this framework that we've built. So if you've got something that works for you or doesn't work, let us know. If you're missing materials, if we've made a mistake, let us know. On skypeoperationsframework.com/feedback. We also have an active community based on SOF. You can discuss anything within SOF with your peers, as well as the people behind SOF at aka.ms/SOF community. So for today, this is part of our assess phase, and it must be performed for every implementation. The Network Readiness Assessment is also a continuous process. Please note that SOF is a living framework, so we innovate on a constant basis. New content will be added and existing content will be updated. The most recent trainings can be found on skypeoperationsframework.com/academy, and this is the October 2016 version of this training. As a side note, if you've already consumed the previous version of this training, there's actually an update version available that will get you to this version. You can find this on skypeoperationsframework.com/academy as well, and it's called the Network Readiness Assessment, What's New. So if you've already done a previous version of this training, that's the training for you. If this is your first time and you've consumed the overview training, then we will walk you through the mock delivery of the October version right now. So let's do a quick recap. And the recap is of our overview. So we talked about the Skype operations framework. We talked about the network readiness assessment within that framework. We talked about the stages that we're going to go through. So stage 1 is really our kickoff and data collection. We've got a stage 2 in which we're doing assessment workshops, and we'll do some on-site workshops. Perhaps we'll also deliver express route some express route decision points to the customer, and so the deployment team or the customer themselves would do traffic simulation. Stage 3 is the finding and recommendation stage, in which we do a closeout workshop for the customer to help the customer spot any weak points and basically decide on what's next to deploy, to fix before we can start using Skype for Business. So what's the timeline for deploying this? So normally you would get something like, we would do a kickoff workshop, and which we'll go to with our customer today. It usually takes about 2 weeks before the customer has completed the questionnaire that we're giving them in that kickoff workshop. And about 3 weeks from that kickoff workshop, we would do the on-site workshops. We would cover the questionnaire, persona generation, bandwidth calculations, and traffic simulation. We would also do networking recommendations at that stage. Once again, the traffic simulation is new for the October version. If your customer would do this themselves, we would require it to do for the customer to do the traffic simulation before we would do the closeout workshop, since we need the results for the closeout workshops. So all these stages have dependencies on each other. You need to complete one before you can do the next. So we introduced the Essentials version. We talked a little bit about the Advanced version in the previous training. Let's do a recap about that as well. So the Essentials version is one that we expect every customer to run. Every customer must run it, and they must keep running it. So once they've done it once, based on the results, they might need to do an Advanced. But then every time there's a change, they should run the Essentials again. It will provide them insight into network requirements. It would help identify weak areas. It's a mandatory part, and it would provide minimal traffic simulation against Office 365. If any of these outcomes give them a reason to do an advanced version, the advanced version will provide them a deep dive into weak areas. It could also provide both analysis and remediation. It's delivered by qualified partners, and it provides WAN, LAN, and internet traffic simulation. So about this life cycle, so we would start on the left with the Network Readiness Assessment Essentials. This is something that we'll walk our customer through today. Based on the outcome, we would do network optimization. And if needed, you would also do an advanced version of this assessment. At that point, any network optimization that would lead from the Network Readiness Assessment would be performed as well. And then as soon as anything changes in either Skype for Business or in the network, you should rerun a Network Readiness Assessment Essentials. This way, you would have a continuous life cycle of network readiness assessments within that customer. And your customer would always be prepared to run Skype for Business. So with that being said, let's introduce our customer. So our customer is Contoso. They're actually in 4 different locations worldwide. First location is in Redmond in the US. The second location is in Los Angeles in the US. They have a location in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And they have a location in Stuttgart, Germany. They're planning to use Cloud PBX in the US, and they would use Cloud Connector Edition in other countries. They didn't provide us any other information just yet. So let's start with the preparation stage. The preparation stage is where we start preparing all of our materials so we can start providing this to our customer. So how do we start? We will go to skypeoperationsframework.com. Our training is found at the same URL. We would complete the Network Readiness Assessment Overview training, the one that you're following right now. You should read the delivery guidance and activity description. Share the work breakdown structure with your project manager. There's an express route workshop. This is something that we would require you to complete internally, so within the deployment team. And based on that outcome, you would share this with the customer. You would do this with the customer. We'll talk a little bit about more about the triggers for that later. So let's get started with this. So let's prepare the kickoff deck first. So we should call the customer and schedule that kickoff call. The kickoff call will take about 2 hours. We need to have all the required participants as listed below. And once you've gotten this confirmed to the customer, you should send a confirmation email. Usually these things are remote sessions. If you're very close to your customer, you can always do this as an in-person session. So the kickoff call really is meant to provide your customer information about, hey, what are we going to do? What are the timelines? And what are we expecting from you? So we've called Contosa, we've told them that we should do the kickoff call, and luckily they have time right now. Before we can do the kickoff call with the customer, we should go through the express route guidance. So the express route guidance is focused at the deployment team. We are delivering this guidance internally within the deployment team, and the deployment team can be a partner deployment team or the customer themselves. And it's really focused at getting the understanding about express route before talking to the customer about express route. So if the outcome of the express route is, of this guidance is, hey, this is something my customer would benefit from and we should really show this to the customer, you can reuse this guidance as a workshop and deliver this to the customer. Could be delivered during the on-site workshop, perhaps as a remote session, perhaps in person. It's up to you how and when and if to deliver this. Please note that express route will only apply to a select number of customers. Not all customers will deploy express route everywhere. There might be different solutions that are better suited for them. This is why this guidance is crucial. And all deployment teams and partners should understand express route and understand the networking topology behind Skype for Business. So before we dive into this network guidance and this express route guidance, let's be very clear about network edges. We've got two types of edges. We've got an edge of your network and we've got a Skype for Business edge. And we keep using the terms quite freely in the same sort of context. So a network edge is a logical boundary that serves as a delimiter between the internal and external network. The most practical approach is think as your home router that you connect to the internet. Your own PCs and your laptops is your internal network, the internet is the external, and your router is basically your edge network, your edge device. Within Skype for Business, there's also an edge role, which is a server role which can be installed on a physical or virtual server. That's a server role, and it basically is the boundary between internal and external Skype for Business traffic. So while they perform a different sort of function, they're very different concepts. So we want to make sure that you're aware when we talk about edges, we talk about network boundaries, and when we talk about a Skype for Business edge, that's a Skype for Business rule. So what's express route? Why would people want express route? Well, we've talked about this quite a bit, and these are very good benefits of express route, because express route will be a managed connection to Office 365 or other destinations. So you can classify and tag traffic. You've got separate queues for each traffic class, and it's a fully managed connection. It can also offer you a 99.9% financially backed SLA. So when it comes to connecting to Office 365, it is undoubtedly a more reliable connection and a better backed connection than the default internet connection. This guidance, however, when we deliver this to the customer, when we're talking to the customer, first we need to consume this ourselves. So because we need to understand that although the benefits are well understood, if it actually makes sense for the customer. So what kind of connectivity do we have for express routes? Well, there are three types of connectivity. You can either connect via a cloud exchange co-location. These are fixed locations in the world that are co-located data centers where you can bring a server inside, and that server would then be directly connected to express route. There are also point-to-point Ethernet connections that you can buy from a provider, and at that point, a single location in your network would be connected to express route. There's also the express route to the any-to-any connection, which basically means that express route gets one or more connections into your MPLS cloud. Those are the different connection models that we have. And when it comes to Skype for Business, the mostly used ones are the any-to-any. Most customers will have an MPLS cloud already that's fully managed, and they would hook ExpressRoute up to that MPLS cloud. We also have three different public destinations, or three different destinations for ExpressRoute. So ExpressRoute can connect in three different kinds: the point-to-point, any-to-any, or the hosted cloud co-location. But then it can connect to three different services. The first service, and we call this the Microsoft peering, is when we connect to Office 365. This is also the connection that we would use for Skype for Business. The second one is public peering, where you set up an ExpressRoute to Azure public IP addresses. The third one is an Azure private peering, where you connect ExpressRoute to Azure private IP addresses. You can have 1, 2, or 3 different types of ExpressRoute peering for the same customer. If you have Microsoft peering, you cannot use that for your Azure public peering. You would need a secondary ExpressRoute for Azure public peering. So a customer can have 1, 2, or 3 of these flavors. For Skype for Business, the most likely one would be the any-to-any via the Microsoft peering. Now let's talk about edges, because this is where most people get a little bit confused. So this is why this guidance is also very much aimed at the deployment team. And this is why it's super critical that the deployment team definitely has a good understanding about this. So when we're doing this, when we're measuring and we're talking about, well, let's say performance requirements about clients to Microsoft edges, this is what we're talking about. So we are measuring 2 different ways of connecting to Skype for Business Online. We're measuring between the Skype for Business client and the Microsoft Edge. The Microsoft Edge is where the public internet stops and where the Microsoft network starts. So we don't really care about the traffic between the Microsoft Edge and the Skype for Business Online servers. The reason for this will be more visible in the next couple of slides. The main rule for this is that the Microsoft network is owned and operated by Microsoft. This is one of the best networks in the world. We have full control over that. And as soon as the traffic reaches our network, the Microsoft network, we can make sure that it's of the highest quality. So when we measure any interference or any quality issues, we want to measure between the Skype for Business client and the Microsoft Edge, and the customer Edge and the Microsoft Edge. Because in this practical example, you'll see that those Microsoft Edges, we also call them Azure front doors, they're actually spread out all over the world. So if you have a European customer that's located in a European data center, the Skype for Business Online servers would be in Europe. The Skype for Business Edge role would also be in Europe. However, when connecting to that Skype for Business Online environment, we wouldn't connect directly to Europe. What would happen is that this European customer with this American branch site, it would actually have that customer network with the Skype for Business client and the customer edge router. It would go onto the American internet for that American branch site's ISP. It would then find the nearest Microsoft Edge, which would be in the US. As soon as it finds that edge, the rest of the traffic would flow between the Microsoft Edge over the Microsoft network, also traversing the transatlantic backbone over the Microsoft network, and then reaching the Skype for Business Online servers. So the only portion of the network where there's no control is the public internet. And even that portion is a relatively small portion. We would go onto the Microsoft network as soon as possible. This this means that for customers that have deployments in Europe on the Skype for Business Online servers, a large portion of the travel would actually take place over the Microsoft network. So let's talk a little bit more about that ISP. So the way an ISP works is that every ISP is connected via a lot of internal routers to an internet exchange. However, that ISP needs to pay for any traffic going over the Internet Exchange. And because they know not everybody will be online at the same time, they would say for every 1,000 users that we've sold 1 megabyte of traffic to, we would buy 1 megabyte of traffic on the Internet Exchange. So that's an overbooking of 1 to 1,000. That's normally not a problem since we're talking about hundreds of thousands of customers. But if everybody wants to go online at the same time, that sort of becomes a problem. So what providers do, instead of spending more money at the Internet Exchange, is they talk to different ISPs. And they basically say, well, how about we circumvent the Internet Exchange and we just take a cable between the two of us. And it's literally a cable. It's usually a fiber cable. They would then hook up the two providers directly, and they call that a private peering. So they would set up a peering between ISPs. And now instead of both paying the Internet Exchange for traffic between them, they actually have a free cable between them. They don't just do this between ISPs, they also do this to high bandwidth consuming services such as Netflix. The interesting thing here is that we're actually doing this with a lot of providers as well, with our Microsoft Edges. So for most customers, the traffic actually never even goes to a different ISP or the Internet Exchange. The traffic always stays within the ISP and then goes onto the Microsoft Edge. This means that your ISP by default is capable of doing this to your traffic. So your traffic now goes over a lot of different routers. If I've got performance issues, what I can do is actually call that ISP and tell the ISP, hey, I can see you've given me 30 different hops. If I pay you a little bit more, can you do this for me? A more direct route to the Microsoft Edge. And how about I pay you more and you give me this, a direct route? This way, you're not paying for express route, but still you have a very direct and great connection to the Microsoft Edge. What we're trying to show you is this is how an ISP works. This is how connectivity to the Microsoft network works. And this is what you're trying to accomplish. You can accomplish this by using ExpressRoute and many other things. But perhaps it's only for you, the only concern is performance. And this might be a great solution for you and cheaper than ExpressRoute. For us, ExpressRoute is the means to a solution. And the solution is to get great quality on the network. If that quality can be achieved by simply paying the ISP a bit more and having the ISP directly route your traffic, then that's a great way to proceed as well. So now we understand this and now we know this, we need to decide, should we do this with our customer? Contoso has some locations. Is ExpressRoute beneficial to them? So we need to think about what's our road to ExpressRoute? So first we need to do a network readiness assessment with traffic simulation. Well, good news, we're doing this with Contoso. This will highlight any reasons for perhaps using ExpressRoute. Maybe the only way to meet our performance requirements is by implementing ExpressRoute. Maybe your customer has specific requirements. Maybe they're saying we need this 99.9% financially backed SLA. If that's a business requirement, you will need ExpressRoute. So you need to think about your customer. And if your customer might be a customer that benefits from ExpressRoute, you can reuse this guidance to actually deliver ExpressRoute, this presentation, deliver decision points to your customer. So some of the decision points, when should we use this? If it improves network performance, if that SLA is needed, if you need guaranteed bandwidth, if you need a managed connection or QoS, if a highly available connection is required. Those are all very valid reasons for ExpressRoute. And now we need to think about, is ExpressRoute valid for Contoso? Should we present this to Contoso or not? So after you understand these points, we now need to decide, should we present this to the customer? If we do, deliver this as a workshop, can be part of the 2 weeks or the 1 week on-site. It can also be delivered separately to the customer at a different time, either in person or remotely. The main key behind this ExpressRoute guidance is to create an understanding about ExpressRoute. Once that understanding is there, a decision can be made. So now we as a deployment team, we understand ExpressRoute, we're ready. So let's do this kickoff with the customer. So what's our goal? We want to run the customer through the kickoff workshop. So I've taken, just like I've taken some highlights from the ExpressRoute deck, I'll be taking some highlights from the kickoff workshop. So, hey customer, great that you're here. We want to talk about why are we doing a network readiness assessment. It's very important to show this to your customer and to talk to your customer about this, because your customer needs to buy into this. If they think it's just a requirement and I don't really care about this, then they will never take action on that. So we'll explain the differences between essentials and advanced. We'll talk about the life cycle, and we'll also talk about traffic simulation. So traffic simulation is a new portion of our October version, and we need to be clear to the customer. So Mr. Customer, the Network Readiness Essentials contains a traffic simulation. We, as Microsoft, provide you with a free tool that you can use for this. If you want a more advanced or more detailed version, there are multiple partner offerings that can do this as well. There are two possibilities of running this. We can give you guidance and you can run this yourself, or we can do this for you. If we do this, there will be some additional time concerned, and we should set an appointment for when we should run this. If you're running this, we can provide context on how to run these, where to run these, and how to collect results. The simulations should be run and should be done before our closeout stage. So what do we do for the essentials traffic? We'll actually measure against our published networking targets. We'll talk more about the networking targets later on and in our different workshops. You can run this on any Windows laptop, PC, or server that's capable of running the Skype Business client. Use the same ports and protocols as the Skype Business client. And if you'd rather run a partner add-on, you're more than happy to do that. It must be run on every site. And we have two different ways of testing. You can test you must test between the client and the Microsoft Edge, and the customer Edge and the Microsoft Edge. We'll show you a little bit more about that later on. Dear Mr. Customer, it's your responsibility to provide those capable devices. So now we've done the kickoff, it's important for you to understand that this is the Network Readiness Assessment Essentials. So this is why you explain to the customer that this is a life cycle and you should keep doing these later on. So it's important the customer pays attention, because the customer is expected to keep running the Network Readiness Assessment Essentials throughout the Skype Business lifecycle. So what are your responsibilities, Mr. Customer? You should complete the questionnaire. You should provide access to relevant teams during the on-site. You should also enable the running of traffic simulation. So you need to make sure the ports and protocols are allowed, the support people are available, and the correct devices are ready. If you're running this yourself, then you're also responsible for running this. You should also provide stakeholder and sponsor during the process. We need someone that owns this network readiness assessment with executive power. So this is the point where we take the customer through the questionnaire, because we have some questions for the customer. So what's the first thing we need them to do? So they must provide us with a high-level overview. This high-level overview must provide users per site, when and internet links, etc., etc. There's a ready-to-go Word document that you can send to your customer, and the customer should complete this for each site they own. The second step they should do in that questionnaire is actually provide a per site detailed list. So we've given this to the customer, and now we need to plan the next steps. So who's going to be responsible for finishing this questionnaire, and when is it done? This is something the customer must decide in this workshop. We should also set a date for the on-site activities. We have 3 separate parts of 4 hours each. Usually something like this is done in a day or 2, but depending on the size and complexity, it could be more or less. We should also decide now who's going to do the traffic simulation, because if you're doing the traffic simulation and not the customer, then this might be a good time to also plan when we're doing this. please be sure to understand that you must complete both the traffic simulation as well as the on-site workshops before we can run into the closeout stage. We should plan a sort of a date for the closeout presentation, because once we have dates set, we can work towards them, because we need deadlines. So our customer has responded to the questionnaire. They're obviously not the best drawers in the world, but they've shown us the amount of users, the WAN, the Ethernet, the QoS, all those settings they've given us, and the connection method to the different platforms. They've also responded to the questionnaire. So we only have one site shown right now. They've given us the EU headquarters. So it's in Utrecht, 4,000 users, Corneel's their main contact, WAN connection speed, internet connection speed, all the questions we had, they're all being presented by the customer. We need this for every site, and we can use this to highlight any problem areas. If you look at the right, you can see that they actually have an existing issue. Their wireless coverage doesn't seem strong in all areas. Now we have completed the kickoff the call. We've gone through the express route workshop, and we've decided whether or not to redeliver this to the customer. And we've decided not to redeliver it, since this wouldn't be, the customer wouldn't benefit. And we've also decided that the customer will do the traffic simulation themselves. We've made all of the decisions. We're now ready for the on-site workshops, since the questionnaire is done. So we should prepare the deck. There are several portions in the deck that you need to update before we can start delivering this deck. For instance, you should add the customer's goals to the deck. There's also a portion where the customer's WAN diagram should be added into the deck. Once you've prepared the deck with things like network findings and all those things, you're ready to deliver this to the customer. As you can see, remember the wireless network coverage that we uncovered in the questionnaire. We've also already flagged this as a potential problem and something that we should discuss during the on-site workshops. Before you deliver this, within SOF, we have a persona workshop. If this persona workshop has been done by your customer, this is why you should always talk to the rest of the deployment team. But if your customer has done this, you can use all of that information in that persona generation. So you can basically already prepare the entire persona generation. So the only thing you need to do is verify with your customer. Please check with the SOF team before actually proceeding. If you already know some values, which you should because you've gotten the questionnaire, you can already start entering these in the bandwidth calculator, but avoid making assumptions. You should let the customer talk you through it. So there are three portions: persona generation, bandwidth calculator, and networking recommendations. If you've already done the persona workshop, it's more persona validation. Delivery date of this was planned during the kickoff workshop and is dependent on the completion of the questionnaire. It's usually 2 days, can be more or less depending on the complexity, can be augmented with express route guidance. If you think your customer will benefit from express route guidance, you can deliver it during this week or remotely. And a traffic simulation can be done during that week. It just depends on who's doing the traffic simulation. If you're doing the traffic simulation, we would always recommend to be on site during the traffic simulation, because the customer can provide any support that you might need. So, dear customer, let's do our on-site workshops. So for today, we'll talk about network assessment. We'll do the review of your questionnaire. We'll talk about what Skype for Business traffic actually is and understanding that. We'll talk about the personas, the bandwidth calculator, and any networking recommendations. Please note what we're going to show you in the training on are highlights from the on-site delivery to make sure that we can fit this within the hour. During all of the decks, you will find hidden slides throughout that actually guide you how to deliver the next slide. So, dear customer, this is your network. This is what you've given us. Is this correct? Also, looking at your questionnaire, these are already some issues that we found. We should discuss them today, and while you're discussing them with the customer, make some notes to make sure that this pops up again in the closeout workshop. Before we can really dive into our recommendations, it's imperative you understand Skype for Business traffic. So this is the slide where we explain to the customer how we should help you with this, how we should help you with this kind of traffic. So what kind of traffic does Skype for Business actually have? We've got signaling, media, one-to-one, conference, and other traffic. This is the point where we walk the customer through each type of traffic. It's also important to explain the difference between TCP and UDP. So customer, we would mostly use UDP. It's really important to get this done right. UDP traffic is susceptible to packet loss, and it's really used for media traffic. TCP would get retransmit, signaling uses TCP. Important to get the difference right is to make sure that the customer also gets the right ports opened. So let's talk about persona generation. Why do we need these? Because we need to reflect the users in the bandwidth calculator. What we've done, we've actually taken a look at the persona workshop within SOF, and we've gotten this information from our persona workshop. So we know that Contoso has 2 persona groups. They all use medium. The difference here is that they have a group of mobile workers that are in the office 1 day every 2 weeks, and all users are online. So at this point, we'll explain to Contoso how to use the bandwidth calculator. We have to get all information before we can do this, and we have to train the customer because the customer is expected to keep this up to date. So we'll start completing the bandwidth calculator with the customer's personas. So we'll put all the sites. So we put the sites in the Office 365 site, and we'll put the branch site. They have local internet access. By the way, if we're using Cloud Connector Edition, please be aware, as per the guidance that we've included a Word document that has guidance on the bandwidth calculator. If you're doing this, we're now assuming that they're all using a Cloud PSTN. If they would be using Cloud Connector Edition, then any site using Cloud Connector Edition should be listed as a central site. This is well explained in our bandwidth calculator guidance. For now, we've all listed them as branch sites. We add the personas with the correct numbers to the site. We add the bandwidth numbers as per the questionnaire, and we complete the amount of people per site. At this point, we get the results. We can see the amount of users signed in, we can see the inter-site bandwidth, and we can actually see the internet link usage per user, per site. This is what we need when we start calculating for ExpressRoute or for just the bandwidth recommendations. Please note there's also a graphical view. You can use that. The graphical view really is there to get nice pictures. These are the numbers you need. These are the important numbers. So once we've completed the bandwidth calculator together with the customer, we should be going with the networking recommendations. So the customer now knows, my customer Contoso knows how this network is built, how the network requirements are built. They can start updating this on a regular basis, and they can make sure that they always have to provision the right amount of bandwidth for Skype for Business. So let's take them through the networking recommendations. So what we've done is we've taken all of the information from these sites. These are the official sites that you would need and that you can use as a reference. We expect you to go through these sites before going with the customer through this, because the customer might have questions, and our slides really are guidance slides. So what are our performance requirements? So for optimal Skype media quality, we should meet these requirements. Remember when we had the conversation about the Microsoft Edge? So this is where you as a customer should get between the client and the Microsoft Edge and the customer edge to Microsoft Edge. These numbers are officially published numbers, and these numbers must be met. If you're not meeting these numbers, you should take a look at perhaps switching ISP, perhaps using ExpressRoute, or have that conversation with your ISP regarding why you're not meeting these requirements. So, because if you're not meeting them, Mr. Contoso, you will run into issues. It's as simple as that. You will get people complaining. All client communication suffers if you're not meeting the requirements between within your network. If it's between the network and Office 365, it's mostly conferences and PSTN calling. Clients working remotely, if they have issues, basically all client communication can be impacted. Although you have no or almost no control over this. The inside your network and between your network and Office 365, those are the areas that you do have control over. So Contoso, you asked us what are our recommended values? So our recommended values are, you should always tag voice and video traffic. If you want to tag application, zip, file, or anything else, these are our values, but we really want you to tag voice and video traffic. So some of the other slides that are meant as discussion points, and please note that you should always take notes during the discussion of this to make sure that your customer actually knows that you know what your customer is thinking and what possible issues there might be when going into the closeout workshops. So Contoso, you must make sure to open all the required ports. For instance, when we talked about the UDP versus TCP traffic, if you close UDP ports, traffic will flow over TCP, and that will highly impact quality. We also have a set of fixed port ranges, and you cannot change them. As far as firewalls, internal firewalls shouldn't be used. The external firewalls must have the correct ports opened. Please remember that Skype Business always finds a way. The problem with finding a way is that this will impact media quality. Traffic might flow in an unexpected way or might loop back in certain directions. So internal firewalls should not block any Skype Business traffic. A special note here for proxies, routers, and traffic optimizers. So routers must be configured to allow Skype for Business traffic to travel directly to Office 365, and proxies should be bypassed for Skype for Business. They will impact both the user experience. The user might need to sign in a couple of times for the proxy, and it will impact quality. So customer, we talked about the traffic simulation, and just note there are many more of these slides where you would talk, these are talking points with your customer where you would discuss any things that would need to happen in their network and things they need to take care of. So let's discuss the traffic simulation. So it's a mandatory part, and it can be run by the deployment team or the customer. In most cases, we would expect the customer to do this. The results should be analyzed by the deployment team, and it must be done before we can run the closeout workshop. And they can use either the Microsoft tool or a partner tool. So, Mr. Customer, what were we thinking when we were building this? We were thinking of building an easy to install, run and operate tool that can be run by every customer and deployment team in the world to verify their current connection status as compared to the networking requirements for Skype Business Online. So if you look at the networking requirements from before, these two, this tool is the Microsoft Network Assessment tool is definitely capable of measuring between the network edge and a Microsoft Edge and the customer client and a Microsoft Edge. So what do we need? And we discussed this with you, Mr. Contoso, in our kickoff workshop. Windows 7 or higher, Windows Server 28 R2 or higher, and you do require the desktop experience feature if you're running Windows Server. No additional software should be installed and no third-party firewall should be installed. As far as hardware, it can be a virtual or physical server, must be a dedicated NIC, a dual processor, 4 gigs of memory or more. So what are we testing? Between your customer edge router and the Microsoft Edge. This is easiest done by placing a PC in the DMZ, preferably directly into the router. And we should use a customer PC, so a PC that would also be used to run Skype for Business, on the customer network, between the customer network and the Microsoft Edge. So these are the things we test. So every location should be tested between the customer edge and the Microsoft Edge. We should also add a test between each Skype Business client and the Microsoft Edge. If you've got clients in multiple network segments, for instance in the Netherlands, where we have clients on both the wired and the wireless network, we would test both network segments. Germany, United States, and Iceland all have only one network segment for their clients. They will be using real laptops that would be used in their actual deployment as well. This will also test the network drivers at the same time. Then we should focus on representative timeframes. Once a test is done, we should copy out the results. So what's a representative timeframes, or how do we actually extract the results? So first, let's focus a little bit on the representative timeframes. So a representative timeframe would be office hours for an hour and out of office hours for an hour. We recommend to run 5 simulations. So 3 times during busy hours, so office hours, and 2 times running non-busy hours. That way, you've got a nice baseline of how the network will react without traffic and how the network will react with traffic. Once you have the result, after each test, complete the results out to a central location and rename them. Then convert the results. We've included a tool called resultsanalyzer.exe. You can enter the name of the TSV, and a TSV is a tab-separated value file, and then you get a sample result as below. As you can see, I ran this against 10 results in my results file, and if you want, you can create your own queries and your own nice graphs for this TSV file. But we'll show you that if the pass or fail rate, so if this would have been ran on a Microsoft Network Edge, between a Microsoft Network Edge and a Skype Business client machine, it would have passed on all accounts. Between the Network Edge and a Microsoft Edge, it would have failed the packet loss rate. Note the results and add them to a table. So what should we be expecting? And this is a representative graph here. So we should expect that the latency would be fairly stable throughout busy and non-busy hours. The latency or round trip time will be a little bit lower during non-busy hours, but it should be fine during busy hours. Burst packet loss will be higher during busy hours, just like packet loss, the inter-arrival jitter, and the packet reorder, because the line is more in use. So once the customer has run all of these and you're interpreting the results, this is what you should be doing. So if a customer as a site passes on all accounts on during all 5 times, and I'm displaying 3 times here, we can see that it passed on all of the accounts. So this is a pass for this site. The second site, however, has partial passes. So sure, busy hour 1 passed, non-busy hour also passed, but there's a busy hour with some issues. This might indicate a bandwidth issue or something else, but this should be investigated. Because the non-busy hour traffic is doing great, we know that the site is perfectly capable of supporting Skype for Business with probably minimal changes. Results of the bandwidth calculator can give a better understanding of whether or not we're actually meeting the bandwidth requirements. Then there's also the point where you're just failing on all accounts. As you can see, the site's failing during busy and non-busy hours. This indicates a real problem with the site. So Contoso, we need to make sure that we fix this before proceeding. At that point, we will organize the results and we will put them in a table. So Amsterdam was a pass, Munich was a partial pass, Vienna was a fail. We're taking these results and we'll show them in the closeout workshop. So at this point, we've done the traffic simulation, or the customer has done the traffic simulation. They've given us all the results and we've worked with these results and we've analyzed the results as well. We've decided that this customer wouldn't benefit from ExpressRoute, so we haven't redelivered the ExpressRoute deck. Now, Contoso, it's time for your closeout workshop. So what we'll be doing, we've taken all the results and highlights from the previous session. So that's the bandwidth calculator result, the networking recommendation results, and the traffic simulation results. And we've implemented them in the closeout workshop. Please understand, the closeout workshop is meant to show the customer what to do next. What's the next step? What's a concrete thing that we need to do? So, Contoso, these were your personas that we've talked about, and you talked about your persona workshop before. These are the definitions of your personas. And Contoso will spend some time on discussing these, and it's a recap of what we've discussed in the earlier weeks. This was your network as you've described it to us, and this is the bandwidth calculator outcome. This is the amount of traffic you need. You don't have any hybrid site. This is the amount of bandwidth that we would require in total for Office 365. These are the sites and amount of bandwidth we need. This is the usage. And these are the recommendations we have for you to tag traffic and amount of traffic being used. Please note that the Redmond site is using more than 45% of the internet link for real-time communication. This is a serious risk and you should look into upgrading this link. Los Angeles is also very close to that max. So Redmond and US, they do require some attention on the internet site. The recommendations we have for you is that you currently don't allow UDP traffic. You need to fix this. This will impact quality. You've got some traffic shapers. You should implement QoS, and your wireless network can impact call quality. So for the deployment team, it's also important to show all the good things. We're talking to Contoso. We want to focus on good things as well. If we just tell them that the entire network is very bad, they will not be very happy. So focus on the good things as well. So Contoso, you've got some great things, you've got some things that need attention, and you've got something that needs to be fixed. Also, the result of the traffic simulation means that in Munich, we might need to upgrade the bandwidth. In Vienna, there's a serious issue, and this requires an advanced network simulation or advanced network readiness assessment. So the next steps, we should upgrade the bandwidth on Los Angeles and Redmond by July 30th, and we should run an advanced network assessment for Vienna. It's super important to set these very concrete steps, because if you don't set the concrete steps, they will never happen. Now, with that being said, we've ended the closeout workshop. We've now delivered a complete network readiness assessment to this customer, and that in 53 minutes. We do expect you to take about 4 weeks for this. Be assured the decks have way more slides in them than what I've shown you today. If you please go to Skype Operations Framework to learn more about SOF. Go to the skypeoperationsframework.com/feedback to provide your feedback. Go to aka.ms/SOF community for the community where me, Thomas, and other people will be available to answer your questions and to help you, just like your peers. And there's a Skype Academy soft training, just like the ones you've consumed today, on the other subjects on skypeoperationsframework.com/academy. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Debbie.
Great, thanks, Cornel. So, folks, I'd like to call your attention to a survey link. It's in the top right-hand corner of your screen. If you would please click that, we do appreciate your feedback. It'll take you into the survey. We hope you found today's information helpful. And if you did enjoy the web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, here's your chance to let us know. The surveys are on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. Be sure to click the Submit button at the bottom to ensure that your feedback has been received. And with that, Cornel, I will turn it back to you for questions.
That's awesome. Thank you, Debbie. So I have a couple of questions here. Question 1. For the customer, the network edge is a sonic wall firewall connecting to the ISP's handoff. How can I run the test on this firewall? Awesome question. We would recommend to plug the device with which you'll be testing as close to that firewall. Make sure you open the correct ports. Sometimes you can plug in directly to the firewall. And it's fine to go through the firewall. That's not a problem as long as you open the ports. But make sure you're not plugging in, that there are not 5 routers and 16 switches in between them. Plug in as close to that router via a wired connection as possible. It's absolutely fine if that's you don't have to run the test on the firewall. You can run the test behind the firewall or in front. We're good with both. Just as close to the edge as humanly possible. For the network tool, there's a question. How is the dedicated NIC a requirement when implemented in a virtual environment? Does it require a dedicated physical NIC or not? Well, it does. The reasoning behind this is that we want to test the network performance. If you're using a NIC that's currently shared with different workloads, perhaps someone is running a large file copy on that same NIC that you're using for your test. That way it would adversely impact the test results. So yes, we would recommend, and we would actually require you to use a dedicated physical NIC to make sure that the test results are not impacted. With that, we had those 2 questions. Please go to aka.ms/SOF community if you have more questions. We'd be very happy to help you out there. There are a lot of very smart people there. We've got a large community that's willing and ready to help you. I'll be there, and a lot of my colleagues will be there as well. With that, I think we're done. I'm going to hand it back to Debbie.
Awesome. Thanks, Cornel. So ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude today's Partner Infopedia web conference. The recording from today's presentation will be available on SkypeOperationFramework.com WAC Academy. You'll also receive an email 72 hours post-conference with details on how to access it. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, Cornel, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.